Over the weekend, reports emerged that the United States Air Force has deployed hundreds of frontline aircraft to the Middle East, including F-22 Raptors and F-35 Lightning II jets, as well as drones with powerful radar and strike capabilities. The island of Cyprus is being turned into an unsinkable aircraft carrier, while the United States, British, France, and Israeli naval and air forces prepare to confront an Iranian-led attack on the Jewish state. In the Gaza Strip, the IDF announced that it had neutralized at least 19 Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists who had set up their base inside a school. The IDF also pushed back against the false narrative that dozens of innocent people had been killed in the strike by publishing pictures and documents from before and after that strike. Elsewhere, there are reports of great fear amongst the Lebanese population, and anyone who can live is doing so. The exception to this is the Iranian-backed terrorist organization Hezbollah, which continues to fire drones and rockets into northern Israel. These attacks caused several fires in the Galilee over the weekend, burning hundreds of acres and forests and farmland. These attacks caused several fires in the Galilee over the weekend, burning hundreds of acres of forest and farmland. However, the IDF is striking back hard, eliminating one Hezbollah field commander after another, as well as destroying weapons depots, launch sites, and other terrorist infrastructure in a warm-up to the main event. Let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your boots-on-the-ground report of what is happening in Israel on the 309th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and all of its terror proxies in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. We start today's report by observing that the United States and its European partners, principally the UK and France, have deployed large forces into the region over the last week. The goal is clear: to deter Iran and its proxies from the promised revenge after the assassinations in Tehran and Beirut, to protect the American forces that are already stationed in the region and are also in the crosshairs of the Iranian axis, and to assist Israel in defending itself against a possible attack, as it did in April. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke about this over the weekend following consultations with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, declaring, "We are prepared to act at a short notice in order to deal with the developing threats to our security, to our partners, and about our interests." Remember, the last time Israel was attacked by Iran and its proxies, on the night between April 13 and April 14, more than 300 missiles and UAVs were launched from a multitude of directions. But at the end, only 5 weapons managed to penetrate Israeli airspace, and of these 5, only one managed to hit in the vicinity of an IDF base in the Negev, causing minor damage. Additionally, an Israeli civilian child was wounded by shrapnel that fell on her family's home. All indications are that the regime which runs Iran is engaged in a fierce internal debate about what to do next. There are voices in Tehran that are trying to point out the obvious, that Iran will suffer catastrophic damage from any Israeli counterattack, which might even lead to the collapse of Iran's fragile economy and the fall of this evil regime. But after all the threats that were made by the political leaders, it will be difficult and very embarrassing for them to back down. The final decision will be made by Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who is ideologically disposed towards the extreme positions held by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is urging a large attack as soon as possible. Therefore, Israel and its allies are taking no chances and preparing for the worst-case scenario. With that in mind, let's take a look at what the American military has sent into the region in the past week. U.S. officials told the Air and Space Force magazine, a leading U.S. airspace media outlet, that the F-22 squadron that was set included about 12 aircrafts that are usually deployed in Alaska. They flew halfway around the world, a total of 10,000 kilometers, making use of aerial refueling planes and a short stop at the British Air Base in Gibraltar, landing at an undisclosed U.S. base in the region. The United States has also sent an aircraft carrier battle group based on the U.S. Abraham Lincoln that will take over from the United States Theodore Roosevelt, which is close to the end of its regional deployment and is currently sailing on the waters off the coast of Oman. In addition to that, the U.S. Wasp, which is an ambitious assault ship equipped with vertical takeoff and landing aircrafts as well as helicopters, is already on station in the Eastern Mediterranean. This ship carries a rapidly deployable contingent of U.S. Marines, while its escorting ships are equipped with air defense systems and radars that can intercept ballistic missiles and other threats. In addition to the new forces that the United States sent, it of course has permanent presence in the region with about 2,500 Special Forces soldiers in Iraq and another 900 in Syria deployed on anti-terrorism missions. There is also a smaller U.S. force in Jordan, which is meant to coordinate regional efforts. A UAV fired by an Iranian-backed militias in Iraq killed 3 U.S. soldiers at a base camp in Jordan in January, leading to a harsh American response. This led to several months of restraint from these Iranian-backed groups in Iraq and Syria, with no more attacks launched on U.S. troops in the region. But in recent weeks, this truce ended. Last Monday, 2 rockets wounded 5 American soldiers and 2 civilian contractors. The U.S. said it was a dangerous escalation on the part of Iran. In related news, on Saturday, it was announced that the United States will transfer $3.5 billion to Israel for the purchase of American weapons and military equipment. This is part of the aid package worth $14 billion passed by Congress in April. The spokesman of the National Security Council at the White House, John Kirby, said that America is ready to do anything to protect Israel.
But we got to make darn sure that we're ready and that we have the capabilities in the region to be able to help Israel defend itself and, quite frankly, defend our own people, our own facilities, our own national security interests.
With events moving so quickly, we encourage you to sign up for our social media channels, which are updated in real time. Do a search for TBN Israel on your favorite social media networks and subscribe today so that you can receive these updates. Switching our focus now to the Gaza Strip. The IDF announced on Saturday morning that the Air Force has struck a Hamas military headquarters located inside the El Tabin school complex near a mosque in the Dir neighborhood of Tufa in Gaza City. The strike was carried out following intelligence reports by the Amal, Shin Bet, and the Southern Command, which included direct knowledge of the Hamas military positions that were set up inside that school. The IDF spokesman stated that the school compound serves as a shelter for the city's residents, but Hamas set up military headquarters there anyway. This headquarters was used by Hamas terrorists to hide out and plan terror attacks against IDF forces and the citizens of the State of Israel. Before the attack, many steps were taken to reduce the chances of harming civilians, including the use of precision weaponry, contractual means, and intelligence information. This is according to the IDF spokesperson's office. According to the IDF, about 20 terrorists, including senior commanders, operated from the compound and used it to carry out terror attacks. According to a preliminary investigation, an IDF spokesman said that the numbers published by the Government Information Office in Gaza, which acts as a media arm of Hamas, are exaggerated and do not match the information available to the IDF. The IDF continues to check and calls on the media to be careful with information published by Hamas officials, as was proven in previous events. I would like to emphasize this point. The Palestinian reports of a massacre of dozens of people at this school, most of whom were innocent children, are completely untrue, and there is tangible evidence to refute these false narratives. After preliminary tests of the procedures and the results of the attack on Saturday morning in Gaza, the IDF states that the attack in Al Tabin was aimed at the mosques that was adjacent to the school there. The attack was aimed at the men's floor, one of 3 in the building. On another floor, the refugees were found, including women and children. The IDF states that this floor was not damaged at all. Additionally, the IDF says that the small-sized munition that was used in the strike did not carry enough explosive power to damage other spaces in the building, but only the space towards which they were launched. And this space had Hamas terrorists inside it. According to the IDF assessment, between 15 and 25 terrorists were eliminated when the building was hit. The Hamas-run civil authorities are declaring an absurdly high number of casualties from this incident, and their claims are not supported by any evidence. In related news, on Friday, the terrorist field commander Walid al-Susi, who served as the chief of the general security apparatus of Hamas in the southern Gaza Strip, was eliminated in a precision airstrike. This evil man was in charge of propaganda and other essential services for Hamas in the Gaza Strip, but he won't be providing these services anymore. Meanwhile, the forces of Division 98 have been fighting in the Khan Yunis area for the past few days and began raiding the area following intelligence indications of additional terrorist infrastructure above and below ground. Before we switch our focus to the northern front, I want to ask you to take a moment and click the follow button, subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you will never miss one of our videos and the reports from Israel about what is happening. While you're at it, please share this video on YouTube, subscribe to this channel, and follow us on social media. This will help us get the truth to more people around the world. The northern border of Israel is tense, with many incoming rockets and UAVs and the fear that something much worse is just around the corner. It has been 10 days since the dramatic assassinations of Fouad Shukar in Beirut and Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Iran and Hezbollah have vowed revenge, but Israelis are not intimidated. However, the people of Lebanon and Iran appear to be afraid of what might happen next, and there are also indications of outrage at their own regimes for creating this terrible situation. Even Iran's recently installed president, Masoud Pezeshkian, has publicly called on the regime to refrain from launching a large attack on Israel, which would surely draw a harsh Israeli and American response. He campaigned on a platform of improving economic conditions for ordinary Iranians, and that will be hard to do if Iran's ports, transportation infrastructure, and major cities suffer massive damage from an Israeli counterstrike. Also in Lebanon, there are signs of panic in the neighborhood of Dahiya, Hezbollah's stronghold in Beirut. In recent days, the Israeli Air Force has repeatedly broken the sound barrier over Beirut as a message to residents that Israel can operate freely in this airspace and wreak havoc if Hezbollah makes a miscalculation. Meanwhile, evidence of concern along the residents of the Lebanese capital can also be seen in the Arab media. In the Arabic language Independent, for example, an article was published on Sunday by the Lebanese journalist Tony Bowles. He wrote that Shukar's assassination in the heart of this neighborhood put the other residents of Beirut's Dahiya neighborhood into anxiety and fear. It had been thought that the Israelis will not dare to target this neighborhood as it is the main stronghold of Hezbollah, where the organization's institutions and political and security leaders are located. But now, Israel has shown the whole world that the gloves are off, and the residents of this neighborhood know that they're sitting in the middle of a bank of targets for the Israeli Air Force. Bowles wrote that unlike the displaced Israelis who received aid from the government, in Lebanon, the citizens do not receive aid from the state or from Hezbollah and use their own savings. This, he added, arouses their anger. According to him, the displacement crisis from Beirut, which caused a jump in rental prices in localities outside it, exposed the division in Lebanese society. Israeli intelligence estimates that Hezbollah is planning to respond to the assassination of their chief of staff Fouad Shukar with or without Iranian support. But there are indications that Arab leaders have urgently requested that Hezbollah hold off any such strike until August 15th to allow time for negotiations regarding a hostage deal and long-term ceasefire of the Gaza Strip. The reports say that these Arab leaders are trying to find a way for Hezbollah to avoid being blamed if the negotiations fail, but Hezbollah has so far not responded to the idea. There are also intense international diplomatic efforts to try and moderate Hezbollah's response so as not to give Israel a pretext for expanding the war. Despite this, in Israel it is estimated that Hezbollah is determined to carry out the attack against Israel in the coming days and will not change its plans because of a possibility of a ceasefire. It is important for me to say that the Lebanese people, like everywhere Iran has touched, are suffering. There are quite a few people in Lebanon who openly oppose Hezbollah and have spoken out strongly against the agenda of the Shiite crime and terrorist organization which operates under the auspices of the Iranian regime. There is a growing awareness among the ordinary Lebanese people that this organization is not doing anything for them, but rather it is serving foreign interests unrelated to the benefit of Lebanon and the Lebanese people. Therefore, the voices demanding that Hezbollah change course are becoming more blunt and loud. This has included some prominent leaders of the traditional Christian churches in Lebanon, such as the Maronite Catholics and the Greek Orthodox denominations. While all of this is happening in Lebanon, Israel continues to prepare for the worst-case scenario. On Saturday evening, the IDF announced that a number of drones were detected that crossed over Lebanese territory. One of them was intercepted while others fell and caused damage but no injuries. Hezbollah accepted responsibility for the attack and claimed that it was launched at an Israeli base in response to the termination of a Hezbollah commander in the Sidon area yesterday. Hezbollah fired another barrage of drones into the Galilee in response to the Israeli moves, and at least 5 fires broke out in wooded areas and agricultural spaces as a result of this barrage. Firefighting teams were on the scene to put up these fires out. Israel has launched a number of counterstrikes on Hezbollah positions in Lebanon to retaliate for these attacks. Please continue to spread the truth, share with us, and more than that, take an active part in supporting us. Donate to us through the link that you see at the bottom of the screen, or go to our website at www.tbn.org/Israel so that we can continue and create more videos like this one. I want to conclude by emphasizing that Israel is at the forefront of the fight against global jihad, while most of the free world continues to ignore the big picture and listen to the lies of Hamas. I would also like to say that Israel is not happy that civilians are harmed in this war. We are fighting against a barbaric terrorist organization. Harming civilians is a tragedy, and it hurts us when they get hurt, even if they support Hamas. The IDF has no intent of harming the innocents in this conflict, and that is very obvious to anyone who operated together with the IDF. But whenever there are allegations of harming the innocents, Israel receives a flood of headlines even before the facts were checked. Hamas has a deliberate method and procedures to maximize the damage to Israel's reputation. They know that the IDF is hesitant to fire on areas where there will be uninvolved civilians, that they will get hurt. So they surround themselves with these civilians in order to protect themselves, and also because they know that if Israel fires on them, these civilians will be harmed. Then the terrorists can claim that Israel is deliberately targeting innocent civilians. International media outlets know that Hamas does this, and Hamas itself proudly declares that it does it anyway. But you can always count on the majority of journalists covering this war to ignore the crimes of Hamas. Anti-Israel bias is the norm. This has an effect on the population that in democratic countries pressure their governments to take hostile actions against Israel regardless of the facts. But Israel is in the forefront of a battle against evil that is threatening to spread over the entire world. In the 1930s, the free world closed its eyes and pretended not to see the threat to the civilization that was emerging right in front of their eyes. I'm talking about Nazi Germany. They paid a terrible price as tens of millions of lives were lost and much of Europe was left in ruins. It took decades to rebuild these cities, while the demographic damage is still with us today. The terrible mistakes of the 1930s must not be repeated in our time. So please spread the truth, share, and follow us. And the most important thing that you can do is pray. Unite in prayer for this region, for all the innocent people that are affected by these terrorist organizations. Pray for the IDF soldiers, for our allies, the United States, France, Germany, Britain, and anyone who is assisting us in this battle against evil. Pray for wisdom for our leaders, and keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.